For every small store you see, they are sitting on an average of $100,000 of wholesale financial losses each year due to unsold inventory.
Yikes.
So you only have to walk a block and you pass $1 million problem of unsold inventory.
That's got to be killing small and medium businesses.
It's totally killing it. If you think about these small businesses, if they could have that extra $100,000 in their bank account, what could they do? They would run a completely different operation. They could hire more people in the community. They could write themselves a bigger check. They could bring in inventory faster, which would produce more gross margin for them. And so there's tremendous opportunity, ironically, that is sitting on this sale rack, unsolved for today. And so what we see is today, these independent retailers, their only solution is a markdown in store, and that's on them, right? The brands aren't giving them a kickback for that. And why the markdowns don't work is because there's only so many people who will walk through that door every day. And that's why they use max retail, because, hey, if you're only going to have X amount of feet walking in, you want those feet buying full price. And yet you know you have dollars sitting on that unsold inventory.
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. Last year, overstocks were estimated to have cost retailers over $560 billion in losses. In addition to the lost volume from wasted stock, the excess carrying costs account for nearly a third of that number. You may recall that in 2017, one popular fashion brand faced significant public outrage over their decision to destroy $37 million worth of excess finished product that hadn't sold. Today, we're going to learn more about the financial and environmental impacts resulting from this difficult to predict industry. I'm joined today by Melodie Baan, co-founder and CEO of Max Retail, to share her insights on how companies can mitigate excess inventory. Welcome, Melodie.
Hello, and thank you for having me, Ellen.
Of course. So this is such a great topic, and I can't wait to get into it today. But let's take a quick moment to get to know you a little bit better. So our icebreaker question for today is, you have to sing karaoke. What song do you pick?
I pick My Shot from Hamilton. It is one of my favorite songs.
I have only seen Hamilton a couple times, not enough to have memorized all of it. Why does that song really speak to you?
I just love the feeling that comes with it and his just beyond incredible persistence and drive. And so, I just connected with the words of it. At one point in the song, it says, I'm passionately smashing every expectations and action and active creation. I'm laughing in the face of casualties and sorrow. For the first time, I'm thinking past tomorrow. And I just find that to be really beautiful.
It's a great sentiment. Do you sing karaoke often?
We do. It's a we because it's a big part of Max Retail's culture. We have product and engineering teams. We have sales and marketing. And no one escapes the mic when we are at a company retreat or when we're in New York getting together for meetings.
That sounds like a fun activity for the group, a fun activity for the company. I have only sung karaoke with friends, like out socially. And even then, we tend to default to 80s hits, and so I'll probably sing something Madonna, or what was the red-haired girl, and I can't think of her name. Tiffany. I'll sing Tiffany on on karaoke. All right.
And it is different depending on who you're with. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. Because, especially if you're doing a duet, you have to have the right karaoke partner for the duet.
Absolutely.
All right. So back to our topic for today, which is inventory overstock and what to do with it. So how has the integration of digital technology and data analytics transformed some of those inventory management practices? Because I know that's one of the cornerstones of Max Retail.
Well, it's been a long journey to getting here today. Fashion has been very slow to adopt technology. I was at a trade show last week where I would say 20% of brands were still taking orders on carbon copy paper.
No.
So we haven't quite arrived just yet. 10 years ago, yes, as of 10 years ago, point of sales were uh, server based, not cloud based. And so that was a huge shift. I would say the biggest driver of our industry coming online is that consumers are there. And so if you think about even 10 years ago, people were not shopping on Amazon as they were before. They were not shopping online in general, right? And that has really been the biggest push of brands and retailers to come online is because they're realizing that's where customers are. And with that, you have to evolve your systems. So I would say retailers tend to be notoriously reactive, not proactive. As you know, in technology, there are early adopters, there are followers, and there are skeptics. In retail, especially, it takes a lot to get something over the line. There have been a couple inventory management systems for brands that really, I believe that they paved the way for other technologies. And I would consider these to be Azure, New Order, Shopify, and Fair. I would say these are the four most successful companies to get the retail industry to move forward. When it comes to inventory management, however, we have not made enough progress. So I see plenty of retailers jumping on to different technologies that will help them sell products, Max Retail being one of them, but very few going out to seek ways to better manage and plan and allocate for their inventory.
Mm-hmm. Right, because Max Retail is solving a problem in the industry of unsold inventory. But if we could solve that problem sooner, then there would be, unfortunately, less for you to do, but another problem for you to go fix, maybe. Let's look at it that way. So I guess
And
we
that's
don't.
100% how we look at it. Yes, Ellen. And here's the irony. If retailers and brands were to be more proactive about their inventory and how they plan for it and how they replenish with shorter cycles, right? We don't run out of a job to do. There is still going to be inventory that doesn't perform. However, the retailers and brands would get more turns, and so they would actually use us more frequently. What we have seen of retailers that leverage Max Retail for their past season inventory is eventually they get such a handle on the past season inventory, they become more aware of where they're over indexed in season, and they utilize our platform sooner to get their cash out and bring in their next shipment. And so we believe exactly what you said to be true. We must solve problems upstream. And that's why a big part of our roadmap at Max Retail is helping brands and retailers receive recommendations of where they're over indexed so they can be more mindful. We're not getting into planning, we're not getting into allocating, but we absolutely can help them with a better job of understanding their sell through and their at risk inventory before it becomes really a dead weight.
Oh, absolutely. What sort of factors are causing that lack of agility in their inventory and their accuracy of forecasting for the need and for the demand?
So I think a big part of the problem is how far out all of this planning takes place. When you, for instance, I was in New York last week. When I was in New York last week, the brands were showing next spring. So here we are in, the end of Q3 and we're showing Q1, Q2 goods. And these retailers are placing orders for merchandise that they will not receive for, 5 to 8 months out, right? What happens next is the brand is going to batch all of those orders together. And then they're going to place their orders with their suppliers of the materials. Those materials have to be made a lot of times. right? They're not just in stock always, they have to be made for the purpose. Then those materials have to get to the manufacturers to be produced. And there's a timeline with all of this. From there, it has to ship and clear and arrive here safely to the United States if it's not already made here. And if you look at the port problem that we're experiencing in this last week, you can see how that's causing a supply chain issue. But these things happen in sequences. Now, what happens when it hits the port? Well, every order that is placed has a start date and a cancel date. That is when a retailer is willing to receive the shipment. And so let's say there's goods that are sitting outside of the port right now, but the cancel date for the order is October 15th. If that merchandise doesn't get to Macy's, Nordstrom, Saks, wherever by the 15th, that retailer can cancel the order and refuse the goods. And now those goods are going back to the warehouse and they have instantly become at-risk inventory. So you can see how the timeline for everything to happen can leave a lot of room for problems along the way.
Absolutely. So we were just talking about some of those situations where this inventory is at risk. So what are some of the financial and operational risks associated with holding that excess inventory? Because it's not just that now you have the excess inventory and you've got to figure out what to do with it. This is going to cause you problems.
Yes, absolutely. It causes major financial problems. Most of the time, these brands are producing on net terms with their manufacturers. And so the immediate risk posed for a brand, for instance, is that they have to pay that manufacturer. And if those goods weren't received, then they don't have the money to pay the manufacturer. And by the way, most brands are not cutting to order. Cutting to order means you only produce what was purchased. Most brands cut in surplus because then the manufacturers give them a better price. So now you've already overcut, right? You overcut, you got more than you needed when it arrived, and now you have even more because your retailer, for whatever reason, didn't receive it. And the financial pain is not just, hey, I need the money to pay my manufacturer, but it's also you're paying to store it now. So that merchandise is costing you overhead and a very expensive overhead. 3PLs will tell you our job is not to be a storage. We're very expensive storage. And I actually get a lot of 3PLs that reach out to me. And the 3PLs say, can you please help my customers? Because I only make money when I pick and pack outside of being an expensive storage unit, but this is not serving me. I need you to sell their inventory. So it is a burden on the brand. It is a burden on their 3PL. And you can imagine that manufacturer is like, where's my money?
Of course. I mean, everyone needs to get paid. So how do retailers balance that risk of, the obsolescence of their inventory, things just sitting around and waiting, and the balance of needing to meet the demand that they truly do expect?
Absolutely. So the problems that we've discussed thus far have really been more of the brand's problems. So yes, let's talk about that merchandise that successfully shipped to the retailer that they received. There's a couple ways that this is solved for. If you have a big notorious name in retail, you can have gross margin guarantees. And what that means is if your product doesn't sell on the floor and you have to do a markdown, that you're going to pay the brand less. Okay. So that is one way. And it's really, if you think about it, it's like probably the best solution because, hey, let's mark it down and see if we can get it sold. Even if we make less money, hey, man, at least the brand isn't stuck holding the bag. Right. And if it can get sold with the markdown, okay, let's think that's best case scenario. The next scenario is when that big name retailer says, I'm sending you back anything that doesn't have a 60% sell through. And that's very convenient for the retailer, but once again, inconvenient for the brand. Now, what I see most frequently with my core customer base, which is independent retailers, we're talking your favorite store down every main street in America. We work with over 2,000 of these today with Max Retail. These are the ones who don't have a markdown allowance. They cannot send goods back to their brand. And would you believe it that for every small store you see, they are sitting on an average of $100,000 of wholesale financial losses each year due to unsold inventory. So you only have to walk a block and you pass $1 million problem of unsold inventory.
That's got to be killing small and medium businesses.
It's totally killing it. If you think about these small businesses, if they could have that extra $100,000 in their bank account, what could they do? They would run a completely different operation. They could hire more people in the community. They could write themselves a bigger check. They could bring in inventory faster, which would produce more gross margin for them. And so there's tremendous opportunity, ironically, that is sitting on this sale rack, unsolved for today. And so what we see is today, these independent retailers, their only solution is a markdown in store, and that's on them, right? The brands aren't giving them a kickback for that. And why the markdowns don't work is because there's only so many people who will walk through that door every day. And that's why they use max retail, because, hey, if you're only going to have X amount of feet walking in, you want those feet buying full price. And yet you have dollars sitting on that unsold inventory.
Okay, so how does the process work to help some these companies offload their excess inventory more efficiently? Do you have a success story you can share?
Oh my gosh, I have my favorite success story. So we've been at this for a couple years. And fun fact, my background is as an independent retailer. So I had a store for 9 years in South Florida. Before that, I was a distributor. So I sold to over 500 retailers around the United States. So I've been seeing this problem in my life since around 2009. And so it's a big part of my course. So when we launched Max Retail, I remember it was about a year ago, there was one particular customer and she was just getting so many sales on Max Retail. Like it was crazy. Like this is like when we were still like a little baby company and she was getting like 5 to 10 sales a day. So I said, I just need to talk to this person. So I called her up and I was like, hi, I'm Melodie. I'm CEO of the company that you're using. What are you doing? And she said, well, I have a small store in Wisconsin in a resort town. And I didn't have a solution for a couple of years. So I would just take the past season inventory, put it in our basement, and bring it out every summer for the sidewalk sale. And so when she started using Max Retail, what she said, I made it a habit every single day to pull one item out of the basement and list it on Max Retail. And she was just consistent about it, Ellen, every single day. And then she'd wake up and she'd have another sale from Max Retail. So she'd approve a sale and list another item. And she just kept doing this. And today she's made over $300,000 on our platform. And that to me is just so fulfilling. And we have plenty more stories just like hers. And they're not even big retailers. They're small retailers with massive problems of excess inventory and no solution, but they are the core pillars of their community.
Yeah, they don't have the negotiating power that a Walmart does or a Nordstrom. So these are fantastic solutions for these smaller businesses that just want to get rid of their inventory to be successful in their business, but they want to offer the products that people want to buy. So what are some of the key benefits that you're able to deliver to your clients compared to those traditional tactics like those clearance sales? I mean, obviously selling all the stuff in your basement is hugely helpful for that, small niche retail store. But, you and I were talking earlier about, just some benefits of them learning how to plan better for their next sales cycle.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of amazing companies out there that help independent retailers specifically do their planning. Of course, the large big box retailers have entire divisions for planning.
Absolutely.
So I would say the number one reason why independent retailers today are so reactive about their inventory is because they do lack that planning. And so I would suggest a couple companies that are good for it. There's Management One, there's Black's Retail. These are really strong companies for helping independent retailers specifically learn how to use their data from their point of sale and really plan better. And believe me, I will never be out of a job for people doing a better job planning. And we work very closely with these planners and allocators at Max Retail. But what I would say the benefits of Max Retail is when you mark down your inventory in store, you're waiting. You're waiting for someone to walk in and buy it. So you're losing what I call your opportunity cost. So what I love to do this example. So let's say I have this bag right here. Better late than ugly, it says. If I'm a brand, I'm going to make this for probably $2. I'm going to sell it to an independent retailer for $10, and they're going to sell it in store for 20. So let's say I buy it today and it's a big hit, right? So it gets purchased immediately. Okay, I made $10 profit, and what am I going to do? I'm going to take my other 10 and reinvest it. That is my turn. So now I buy another bag and I sell that. I do the same thing again. And I do this for 10 days. From my $10 investment, I have made $100 of profit. However, if I buy this today and it doesn't sell tomorrow or the next day or the next day, and 10 days later, I sell it for 20, did I really win? I made $10, but I lost time. And that is why Max Retail is a more powerful tool, because in a few quick clicks, these retailers are able to, in their point of sale, tag the items that aren't performing well. That sends a product feed to Max Retail, and we go ahead and find the images, write the descriptions, and expose this inventory to over 400 million end consumers. Why? So that we can get them paid the highest price for that unit. Because if I don't get them back as close to $10 as I can, it's not enough meaningful money to place their next bet. And time is of the essence. Markdown, it might take 6 months to sell. If Max Retail can sell it for you in 10, 20 days, you get to place your next bet. And that's why I love what we do, because it's about turn. And in retail, turn is everything. It's not about your margin that you got. You might have a 100% sell through, but it took you a year to do it. You might have sold it at full price, but it took you a year to do it. It's a false sense of accomplishment. And that's why when we talk about how to manage inventory, Ellen, the most meaningful thing you can do is know when you're losing your opportunity cost on an item, and you need to get your money out of it so you can bring in something else. And that is where supply chain really hits home for this massive segment. There's 2 million independent retailers between North America and Europe alone. And if all of them paid attention to their turn, they would run far more profitable businesses and have less inventory on hand.
That's amazing. So, what are some practical tips that you would give to a company, a retailer looking to manage or reduce their excess inventory? Obviously, the tip of trying one at a time and do it daily, and make a daily practice of the effort rather than letting time slip by and hoping. I mean, obviously, it's about getting up and trying something. Even if it fails, try something. But what else can they do to manage that inventory? Does it come down to trying to negotiate better deals with the suppliers? Does it come down to trying to have their own online presence for their sales channels? Because I know a lot of these smaller independent retailers don't necessarily have the budget or the staff or the capability to run their own e-commerce site.
I agree with you. Selling online is very tough. I can attest. as an independent retailer, I had, of course, a Shopify store, right? And what my customers would do is go on my site just to see what I had in, and then they would come into my store and buy from me, right? Because I had such a loyal customer base. So, what I would say more important than trying to grow your online presence is to grow your social media presence. And so, when merchandise comes in the store, you have to be proactive about all of it. You have to make sure you photograph it. Yes, put it on your site, even if you're not, planning on becoming the next revolve.com, right? You can still get it exposed so that you can promote it on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. These are where audiences are. And do you know YouTube is still 10 times as big as TikTok? Do not underestimate YouTube. It is amazing. So I would say making sure your merchandise is shot and being promoted, making sure you understand what different social media your customers are on, and also clienteling. There's a clienteling app called One Shop, and it's super amazing for independent retail, where when merchandise comes in, you can see exactly who's bought it in the past and clientele. So Ellen, yes, a big part of making sure you don't have excess inventory is properly promoting the items you have. Know who your customers are. Have a fantastic CRM, or a good point of sale, right? You've got to know the power law, where 80% of your sales are coming from 20% of your customers, right? Just really having a handle on your new shipments to properly promote them so that you can determine what's a dog. That's what we call it, Ellen. We call it a dog, something that's not going to sell. If you've properly promoted it and it's not selling, then you know it's going to be at risk as excess inventory. If you can't sell it in the first 30 days, you're not likely going to sell it in the next 3 to 6 months.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about a lot of clothing and apparel and home goods types of things. What types of products does Max Retail really excel at pushing through this cycle and getting sold? Because retail encompasses so many things, and I know you said you don't do grocery, and that's a huge sector, but home goods, pets, oh my gosh, pet supplies have just exploded in the past few years. As you said, clothes weren't purchased online 10 years ago to the degree that they are now. I feel like I do half of my kids' school shopping online, and Christmas shopping is already done. It's all, the Amazon wish list is created. So those types of things, we're doing all of this online shopping. But what types of goods really perform best for your retailers?
I would say if you've heard of it, it sells on Max Retail, if you've heard of it, right? And what do I mean by that? I would say that 90% of our customers today, the independent retailers that we serve, they are the big thing in their small town. There is no department store near them, right? And so they are the source for buying those fantastic brands, whether it be apparel, whether it be footwear, whether it be accessories. And that's where there's this limiting belief that independent retail is dead, but it is alive and well. And you know this if you just get in your car and you don't take the highway, but take like the main road and just drive north for the next 8 hours. It will blow your mind how many businesses there are, and they're doing fantastic.
That's amazing. So what about used items? I know that that's a whole channel on Amazon is, purchasing refurbished, factory approved, refurbished items. Is that something that is it also available through Max Retail, or is it only, new condition items that are just overstock?
I would say in our core categories, which are contemporary apparel, designer apparel, we dabble in luxury. We do have a couple luxury. Where we see the most luxury is actually pre-owned. So we have, what's been interesting is this segment of independent retailers who buy contemporary apparel, but they also sell luxury handbags in store. And sometimes those are not turning. So we'll see some luxury watches, and those can be pre-owned as long as they have authentication. That's fine. And then also we'll do some contemporary pre-owned, but it has to be excellent condition, or it can be returned, but it has to be with tags, right? So we do have a couple sellers on our platform that maybe they'll buy a pallet of returned goods from like a department store. And as long as they're in excellent condition, they're able to list them on Max Retail. I would say 90% of our assortment is unsold inventory that is past season, that is in a physical retailer who carries anywhere between 40 to 60 different brands in store. I would say another 5% of our sellers are what I call the hacker retailers. And this blows my mind. I found out about these same way. I was like, who is that customer? I need to talk to them. And the hacker retailer is fascinating. They actually buy liquidation from brands and from retailers going out of business. And in the past, they were selling it on Poshmark or on eBay. And then they found out about Max Retail and they ask themselves, well, why am I listing this stuff myself on these
Why
sites?
am I doing all the work?
Why am I doing all the work? Why am I dealing with customer inquiries and return requests? Because on Max Retail, all sales are final. Once it's out of your store with the prepaid label we give you, it's never coming back. And so the hacker retailers love Max Retail because now they don't have to do anything. They just buy the inventory and they stock it themselves and they use us to sell it. So that's pretty amazing. And the last 5% of our sellers are brands. We do have brands that work with us directly. And so they're just short staffed, right? Maybe they only have 10 people on their staff and they don't have someone to go and do a past season liquidation strategy. Maybe the pricing doesn't work for them and they need the money. They can't give it away for pennies on the dollar. They'll work with us as well. So we do a lot of business with independents, hacker retailers, and brands.
So what do you feel, or maybe what the impact, the environmental impact is of getting this inventory out of these basements, out of these warehouses, and to the end consumer who wanted the item in the first place? This is keeping a lot of material out of our landfills. It's making sure that the economy is still chugging along, which I know for a lot of people, especially during the American election season, that's a huge topic. But environmentally, that's significant what you're doing for the companies, for the 3PLs, for these independent retailers to manage to keep all of this inventory moving.
Absolutely. I think one of the memories that stands out in my mind the most is a brand that had inventory sitting in their warehouse for 3 years. And it was over 300,000 pairs of shoes.
Oh, that's a lot of shoes. I mean, one would
And
think that that's just going to go to a landfill, or it's going to be a donation to some organization, but they were able to sell it.
Yeah, we were able to help them sell it. And by the way, on that note, I do want to give a shout out to Souls for Souls. It's SOLES, the number 4, and then SOULS, which is the most amazing nationwide organization to donate excess inventory to. So when it is end of life from a brand, before they think of a landfill, call Souls for Souls. They work with nonprofits across the country in poverty-stricken communities, in at-risk families, homelessness. They are doing such incredible work. So anytime we can refer someone to Souls for Souls, if they don't need the money, if they're considering a landfill, if they don't want to leverage Max Retail to get money back, we really love what they do over there. So just want to give them a little love here.
I just have to say, I love your attitude towards just raising up the entire community, whether it's you know that your company is solving a problem for a retailer or for a brand, and that it could potentially, put your company out of business, but that doesn't matter because that'll open another opportunity, and you're giving all of these kudos to these other platforms that are going to help these retailers do a great and fantastic job at their business, and you're promoting this charity that's going to take excess inventory and make sure it gets utilized by someone who truly has a need for it. And that's just an amazing thing for a business person these days, because a lot of times it feels very selfish, if nothing else, that it's all about building your own brand up and amassing as much capital as you can. And it's just very refreshing to hear all of the ways that you are trying to build business for everyone.
Thank you, Ellen. And you said it when we started this podcast today. There's over $500 billion of unsold inventory annually. If I can chip away at this problem, it'll be fantastic, but it's going to take a lot of us to solve it.
It is. But a $500 billion problem, a $500 billion boon for the economies, whether in the US or in, that's only, I believe, a US fact. And I don't know that that's an international number. That's US dollars. So $500 billion back into the US economy would be amazing. And that would be a benefit to everyone. So I do understand your reasoning for wanting to raise everyone up, but it's still an unusual thing. So I am extremely pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you today. What else do our listeners need to know about Max Retail?
So this we found out very early on in our journey is that no one wants anyone to know about their dirty laundry. No one wants anyone to know how much excess inventory they have on hand. Mm-hmm. It's embarrassing. It's something that we prefer not to think about. And yet it is a massive opportunity for revenue. And so one of the core pillars of Max Retail is that it's all anonymous, Ellen. So when a retailer or brand is leveraging Max Retail to sell their past season aged inventory, there is no tie back to them. That inventory just becomes an item that needs to be sold. And what's most powerful about it is a lot of times we see the same item listed across multiple sellers, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what we do in that case is we group it back together. It's still sitting in their stores. But on Max Retail, we now know that there's 100 units of these jeans, right? And that becomes a powerful assortment when we're selling it online. There are a lot of our e-commerce partners. They require breadth and depth of products. You can only qualify to sell on their site if you have a certain volume. And when we work together as a community, it unlocks these opportunities for all of us.
Yeah, you can pool those resources.
Yes, that's what we do. We pool the retailer resources. I always tell our community, we are stronger together than alone. The last unit on your sale rack isn't much. But when it's all listed on Max Retail, it's powerful and we can all command a higher price for it, get it sold. And I just love that. So, when we talk about how are we solving for this problem, it's challenging and we have to be creative. But I really love it. But anonymity, teamwork, working as a community, these are really core things at Max Retail, and sharing knowledge, which is why, as you and I are talking today, Ellen, our biggest company value is share knowledge. And if I can share it with retailers, with brands, with you, with investors who are interested in the excess inventory space and want to know more, by sharing knowledge, we're all going to be able to make more of an impact together.
That's fantastic. Well, and like I mentioned at the beginning, when that one particular fashion brand, decided to destroy their inventory, their excess inventory, it caused major public outrage. But I know when it comes to some of those large brands, the luxury brands especially, they can't allow for their product to devalue. And this gives them the opportunity, especially with that anonymity, to continue to have their product available to the marketplace and not let it devalue and not put it in a landfill and cause major public outcry.
Yeah, that is a major reason why brands work with us directly is the anonymity. And I think the other really important thing to know is when you're looking at past season inventory. And what I love about your podcast is we're talking about supply chain and we're talking about like the end of the line, right? End of the line of the supply chain here. And what I've found to be so true and amazing is that when there is unsold inventory of a brand or of an independent retailer, that same exact item was purchased in another location in season. It was worn and enjoyed by someone. And that person might be done with it and reselling it, on Poshmark tomorrow as pre-owned. Meanwhile, you have the exact same item still sitting in a warehouse or sitting in an independent retailer that's never had the opportunity to be worn. And so in these cases is when we will mark an item of certain brands that are really notorious as pre-owned because it is past season and it has been worn by other people. And when we mark it as pre-owned, nobody gets mad. And consumers don't get mad when they get an item that they bought and it's got the tag on it. You're not going to piss anyone off. So we have found, sometimes even just how you present that item as pre-owned, right, can make a big difference when it's past season, that it's, not a brand new item being sold by the brand at a discount and just being anonymously sold as if it has been worn. And you just surprise the end consumer with a little treat, but protect the brand integrity in the process.
Absolutely. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your knowledge with us today. I've learned so much about the end of the supply chain and what can be done to make sure that leftover inventory after a sales cycle is not just left to the dumpster. All right,
Absolutely,
to our listeners,
absolutely.
if you have a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on the show like Melodie, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us at podcast@mebach anytime. As always, thank you for listening to Speaking of Supply Chain. If you enjoyed our show, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you prefer. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. And be sure to tune in next time.